This video is made with generous donations from amazing furries, just like you. Hey everyone, and welcome to my first ever Digi foot tutorial. I know everyone was probably expecting a normal canine foot, however my tutorials are based on my commissions I'm completing at the time, so we are going to be doing a digigrade hoof today. The pattern for this will be available on my website soon. This tutorial is a zip-on, zip-off style foot paw and is made to pair with my digigrade bodysuit tutorial. So this tutorial will be broken up into 3 parts. Part 1 will be the creation of the pattern itself. The pattern I create in this tutorial will be available for purchase on my website once I've cleaned it up a bit. However, if you wish to create your own, you can use the start of this video to see how I created mine. The second part is a foot placeholder. This is an EVA foam sculpture I use for placeholding and scale reference when patterning digigrade bodysuits. It's also a great way to test out the size of your foot to make sure you've scaled your pattern correctly. If you're planning on using the pattern you create multiple times, I recommend creating one of these to make sure you don't need to adjust your pattern to be more in scale with your duct tape dummy. And finally, part 3, using the pattern you made to create your foot paw. Now, let's go over what you need for this tutorial. For the basic shape prototyping step, you will either need a PC with Blender installed or other 3D modeling software and a 3D printer and slicing program, and with some filament, obviously, or you can also use modeling clay or similar. For this tutorial, I will be using Blender to create the basic shape of my foot and printing a small model of it. And yes, this method will work with canine feet, just model a canine foot instead. However, if you don't have a 3D printer or access to one, you can model your mini foot out of modeling clay or whatever mostly solid material you like. Just make sure it's relatively firm so it won't deform when you're cutting off the tape. For the patterning stage, you will also need duct tape, Sharpie, a printer with a scanner, printer paper. Now, you can also skip all of these and just use my pattern as it will be available for purchase on my website or on my Patreon for certain tiers. If you wish to make a placeholder foot for your bodysuit shaping, you will need EVA foam sheets, glue gun with sticks, and some cheap fleece. This step is optional and you can use a completed foot for bodysuit shaping as well. I just have a placeholder to make it easier for me to work on body and feet at the same time. Now for the rest of the tutorial, the actual construction of the feet, you will need fake fur, at least 1/2 meter-ish for hooves, minky, chunky jacket zips, and the measurements for these will be obtained once your pattern is scaled properly, quilted broadcloth or similar, EVA foam, 2 small dress zips for stuffing removal and adjustment, trailer rubber matting, enough for 2 feet paw bottoms, hot glue, shoe glue or high strength flexible epoxy, E6000 is great, or I've been using flex glue, which is also really awesome. For tools, you will need heavy scissors that can cop a bit of abuse for cutting thick foams and rubbers, so not your sewing scissors, but you will also need your sewing scissors, your sewing machine or hand sewing equipment if you don't have a machine or don't value the health of your wrists, pins or clips, hot glue gun, and a Sharpie. Alright, let's get started. Part 1, pattern shape and creation. Skip this step if you're using my pattern. So I'm using my pre-made digigrade sculpt here to create my hoof shape. Now, am I an expert in Blender? Absolutely not. I watched one tutorial one time and thanks to my homosexual audacity, I believe I possess any and all required skills to achieve my goals, despite only watching one tutorial on the subject. So the TLDR of this section is watch tutorials, use whatever program you like, and I am not qualified to teach you Blender skills at all, but enjoy watching me piss fart around until I have something half decent. Other programs I will recommend for this is Sculptress and Nomad Sculpt, which are also free and a bit more intuitive than Blender. Just make sure you have the symmetry tool on as you work. If you don't have a 3D printer, you can use modeling clay to create your foot shape instead. I just prefer doing it like this because it tends to be a bit more accurate. Once you are somewhat happy with your foot shape, export it as a .object or .stl and load it into your slicer program for your 3D printer. Scale to whatever size works for you. We will be scaling this pattern up so the size of the print doesn't overly matter, but we want to be able to put tape on it. Once you're happy, click print and collect when completed. Once it's printed or sculpted, if you're using clay, we want to start covering exactly half of the foot in tape vertically, including the bottom of the foot, which I of course forgot to film. Alright. I may have forgotten that I was supposed to be recording this. Big brain. But I have a foot, so this is what it looks like once it's printed. I've taken my 3D print, which has come out of Kevin, looking lovely, and I've covered half of it in tape. So you can see right down the middle, right down the back, on the bottom as well. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking this tape off and basically making a teeny tiny pattern. So I'm going to do that. Let's just get onto it. Now we are going to start cutting this tape into pieces, much like we would for a fursuit head. I divide any concave edges into separate pieces and then cut darts into any convex edges, like you would with any tape pattern. For this foot, I would generally divide the ankle and hock section of the foot from the nail, or in the case of a canine foot, it would be the beans, and the bottom of the foot would be one separate piece as well. With hooves, you want to separate the nail of the hoof from the fur so they can be done in separate pieces. If your feet have markings, make sure you draw them on before cutting off your pattern to incorporate it into this pattern. Okay, so now that we've gotten these off, what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a measuring tape, if I can find it, and we are going to measure how long our base piece is. I take a measuring tape and we're going to do it, measure how long this piece is. 5.7 centimeters. So 5.7 centimeters. Okay, so now we're going to do some mathematics. Okay, so we're going to figure this out. So it's 5.7 centimeters long. We want to make this as tight fitting as we can. We don't want to have it too big because else it's going to look thick, very thick. So let's have a look. So this person has size 9 ladies shoes. So we're going to get up the measurements. How big is size 9 ladies shoes? I usually go up a half size just in case, because I'd rather it be too big than too small. Just because sometimes like brand from brand can differ, so I'd much rather go 9.5. So we'll go to 9.5 women's US. So it is 265 millimeters. So we're starting from 57 and we're going to 265. Alright, 57 to 265. So we're going to calculate the percentage increase by 265 divided by 57, 4.65. That 5 is apparently important. So 4.65. Okay, so now we've got our ratio that we're wanting to increase it by. So we have our scan here, which I will probably adjust slightly, but this is one page. So we're basically going to be using an online tool called the Rasterbator, which sounds wrong, but it's basically a program that you can use to make giant posters of images. So you can print it out in a bunch of different A4 sheets, tape it together and stick it on the wall. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the pattern pieces that we have, these three, and we're going to scan them in. So we're going to put them in our little scanner bed in the printer and we're going to scan it into our computer. Here we go, got my scan in now. So we're going to save this. So we're going to test this going into here and going to Rasterbator. So I'll get some footage up on the screen of what this actually looks like. So we're going to choose a choose file. So we'll put in the thing we've just scanned. It's fast. So the output size we want is we want to be our ratio number, which I have written down here, 4.65. So we're going to go output size 4.65, like that. And so we can get away with it printing pretty much the first 8 pages instead of the whole 16. So we'll give it a crack. That looks about right, but I'm going to make sure. So we're going to go continue, no effects, continue, complete 25-page poster. We will not be needing to print the entire 25 pages. So I'm going to download, and I'm going to replace my printer ink because I'm out. I'm going to print it. Against the odds, it printed. So let's test this size out. So I'm gonna stick these together, or at least lay them on top of one another so I can see what I'm doing. So the actual distance we wanted was what? 57 to 265. So we want from here to here to be 26 centimeters, and I can tell already it's not going to be done. Figured it out. After like my 6th attempt, I figured out I got it right on the first try. It's just that my printer that I bought in Australia, for some reason, was set to US paper size because even Australia thinks it's America. Assemble your scaled up pattern using tape and cutout. Part 2, placeholder foot. Now we are going to make one foot using our created pattern out of EVA foam. So trace and cut all your pieces onto EVA foam twice. Once one side up and flip and trace again. I combine the bottom of the foot along the center seam to make things a little bit easier for myself. I cut angles into the side edges of the foam to assist with connection. You want them all to be angled mostly inwards so that when you glue together they allow the foam to curve. I'll chuck up a quick graphic to illustrate. Glue along these seams. I'm using hot glue, but contact cement will probably work better for this. Repeat with all of the pieces until the darts are glued shut. I then take strips of fleece and glue them over the top of my glued edges to reinforce. I trim the edges of where the hoof meets the ankle at an opposite angle so it can be joined together. And join the hoof to the ankle and repeat with the other side. I now attach the backs of my pieces together with the same principles, and the back as well. My camera cut out here, but you get the idea. And the base of the foot as well. My camera cut out here, but you get the idea. You're just making a foot with EVA foam, so we can use it to put it on our DTD. Okay, so now we begin the actual foot paw construction. Finally! First, I grab my pattern pieces for my ankle and cut them out of my desired fur. I'm tracing this pattern 4 times, twice on each side to make 2 feet. Labeling one side A and one B and cut it out. Now I'm cutting the pieces for the hoof out of some black minky, tracing each piece 4 times, the same as before. Fleece would also function well as the fabric for this section. Now I start sewing everything together, starting with the minky hoof sections. I'll be using just a straight stitch for all of this today. I sew the darts closed on the ankle. Attach the front sections of an A and a B piece together, and then pin and sew the hoof section onto the underside curve of this piece. Then I pin and sew a small dress zip into the back of the foot by pinning it pull side to fur side and sewing down the edge and repeating with the other side. Then sewing the open ends closed on either side of the zip to form our foot paw fur. I now work on drafting the pattern for the slipper which I will sit inside the foot. I take a rough size draft of the shoe size and take a measurement of half of the edge as the base measurement for our slipper. Then take a measurement from the base to the top of our back of our fur piece and one from the front too. Finally, take a measurement or trace the top of your foot shape and use those measurements to draft a pattern for your slipper. Cut these out of quilted broadcloth, 4 of the ankle pieces and 2 of the shoe base. Now we work on sewing these together. I tend to start by sewing the bottom of the ankle pieces to each side of the foot base, and then sewing along the front and then along the back. Make sure you leave the top open so you can actually get your foot in. I've sewn it closed before. Big brain. Now it's time to pin everything together with our zip. The zip you want to be the circumference of the top of the hole in the fur, or 2 times the length of the top side of your ankle piece pattern. Turn your fur section with fur inside and your quilted broadcloth with your seams inside, and pin your zip between the 2 upper edges, making sure that the pull side of the zip is sitting against the fur. Start from the front, working around the back, leaving the split in your zip at the front. You can put it at the back if you prefer to, it is your life. Sew over this edge with a straight stitch, double checking to make sure all 3 layers are sewn together all the way along. Now we are prepping our foot paw bottoms. We will be recreating our hoof section out of EVA foam to give the foot some shape. You could try using thin foam for this and see if it holds it that way, but this is what I just did just to make sure that it was going to work the first time. Follow the same process as we did for the placeholder, but with just the bottoms and the hoof. And make sure your smooth side of your EVA foam is on the outside if it has a textured side. Cut all your pieces out of EVA foam, bevel the edges, glue together and fleece to reinforce, until you have the bottom part of your foot and some hoof assembled. Now, I should have glued the bottom of the slipper piece on first before gluing down the minky, so be sure to glue that down first. That's the foot bottom, the bottom piece onto the EVA foam. But work on gluing down your minky on top of your EVA foam, pulling it a bit as it cools to make sure the minky is as smooth as you can get it. And then I glued the lining on because I forgot. Once you have your lining and the minky glue down, glue along the back of your fur and attach to the base of your foot to complete the base. Use the zip we installed to stuff your foot to the desired firmness. Now it's time for the foot bases. Cut your foot paw base shape out of some thick rubber ute tray mats. Take some shoe glue like E6000 and coat the bottom of your foot and wait till touch dry or as per the directions for your glue. Then press together. I use some hot glue to secure the edges of the connection and wait the designated set time for them to dry before wearing. And we are done. Some hoofers for your next hoofer suit. I hope you guys like this tutorial. A normal canine one will be coming soon, so do keep an eye out for that once I have a canine in my queue. Thank you so much for watching, and please leave any questions you have down below and I might answer them in a video, and I'll see you guys next time.